Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Oh, wait, is it recording? Crap.
Is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
The Wyatt Dowdy Show.
Good morning, good evening, good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Wyatt Dowdy, and this is The Wyatt Dowdy Show. A little bit about the show, what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about everything film. Anything that you can think of, we're going to be talking about it. So wherever you are right now, if you're riding down the road, be sure to keep 2 hands on the wheel. If you're sitting at home with your favorite beverage, just go ahead and sit back and relax, take a good sip, and just enjoy the podcast. What we're going to be talking about is all things film. We're going to be talking about a couple segments today that are going to be the main segments that we're going to cover throughout the remainder of the podcast and throughout the remainder of season 1. First thing we're going to talk about an introduction about myself, who I am, why I'm doing this podcast, what I really enjoy about film, and then we're going to also talk about what's current in the news with film. We're going to talk about different productions that are going on. We're going to talk about what films are being pushed back and stuff like that. Then we're going to talk about This Week in Film. It's a little segment I like to do where we go through the years and we see what exactly was happening in the film industry at that time and place, and we're also going to go over different reviews of different movies. That's the main thing that we're going to be doing on this podcast. We're going to be going over different films, and we're going to be talking about what was good about them, what things that were possibly, if they were written or based on books. We're going to talk about inconsistencies in the film. And we're also just going to do a general review. We're just going to do an overview of the film, what I thought about it, what I saw that was really good, what could have been better, but to be honest, we're just going to talk about it. We're going to enjoy, we're going to have a good time. So if you are a first-time listener to the podcast, which obviously you are because this is the very first episode, congratulations. You're getting to listen to the very first episode. This is Season 1, Episode 1 of The Wyatt Dowdy Show. Before we get done and before this song finishes, I'd like to give a special shout-out to Spence. Spence is the guy that produced this song. He gave us permission to use this song in the podcast, and I think it's really great. It really was a good opener, a good segue to it's kind of the music that I really enjoy, and I just thought it would fit very well. So with the remaining time left in the song, I just want you to enjoy, have a good time, and we're out. All right, so let's get started.
This is the introduction.
Thank you so much, Disembodied Voice. Yes, this is the introduction. Once again, just want to thank you so much for listening. I really didn't think, when I was thinking of how I would do a podcast, that it would be a podcast on film. So just a little bit about myself. I'm 24 years old. I am local to North Carolina. And my background, actually my degree, is in cinematic arts. I was a graduate of the Zachy Gordon Cinematic Arts Center in Lynchburg, Virginia, and while I was there, I was able to work on my own short film. I was able to write, direct, and produce my own short film, and I was also able to write my own feature, which was a great experience. I got to learn, how character arc and all these different aspects of story have such an impact into these films. Like a lot of people just watch a film to think this is something that I really enjoy, this is a genre that I really enjoy, but they never really sit and think about how this character is transitioning from maybe their flaw in the beginning of the movie is, I'm not someone that would usually take on a daring task, but by the end of the movie, they're the ones that are leading the whole operation. So I have a background in film. I have a BS in cinematic arts, and I'm actually currently pursuing my master's in creative writing down at Full Sail University in Florida. And so, like I said in the beginning, what we're going to be talking about is the film news, especially for this week, the week of the 15th of April, 2020. We're also going to be talking about this week in film history. And lastly, we're going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies, probably one of the best movies that I have ever seen personally. It's in my top 10. I love it a whole lot. I could watch it over and over and over again and still enjoy it as much as the first time I saw it. The first movie that we are going to be reviewing on the Wyatt Dowdy Show is the movie Jaws. Jaws was made in 1975 by Steven Spielberg, and it's going to be fun, man. Just stick around. One more thing before we get going, I'd like to say thank you to GrandBankss for allowing us to use this song that is playing right now. He's another producer that is found on YouTube, so if you find that you like this music and you want to use it in your own videos, feel free to reach out to SPENCE or GrandBankss, and they're just awesome guys, and you should definitely look at their stuff. It's really good, they're really talented, and just give them a listen.
And now it's time for This Week in the News.
Thank you so much once again, Disembodied Voice. I appreciate you so much in helping me with this podcast. What's going on in the news today with movies? Disney and Pixar's much anticipated new movie Soul has been rescheduled to November 20th of this year due to the coronavirus. Along with this, Wonder Woman 1984 and In the Heights has also been pushed back to later this year. Trolls World Tour breaks a video-on-demand record for the first week in its premiere. Also, James Gunn says that the production of The Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 will be right on schedule in spite of the coronavirus. A list of movies that are available for video-on-demand right now: The Call of the Wild, Downhill, Bad Boys for Life, Sonic the Hedgehog, Onward, The Way Back, I Still Believe, Bloodshot, Birds of Prey, Emma, The Hunt, The Invisible Man, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. All of these movies that have been listed are available on video demand right now on iTunes, Amazon, and any other streaming website that you're able to purchase movies. I'm Wyatt Dowdy, and this is the news. Alright, hopefully that will be the only cringy part of the podcast. So this next segment, we're going to be talking about this week in film history. So I went through and I found different facts about different movies that happened throughout the years. One of our facts is actually from 1894. So this spans back pretty far, but the first fact that I have here is in 2015, Avengers: Age of Ultron premiered in Los Angeles. This was the second Avengers film that a lot of people didn't like, and I did not understand that. You know, that one was really fun. I thought it was good. A lot of people just didn't like it. Also, in 2017, The Fate of the Furious opens worldwide, and its highest grossing weekend was $523 million just in one weekend. Also in 2011, Thor, the very first Thor movie, the first time we're introduced to Thor in the cinematic universe, it premieres in Sydney, Australia, Chris Hemsworth's home country. Also, we have Iron Man 3 in 2013 premieres. This was another one that a lot of people didn't like. I think it might have been because Ben Kingsley was a bad Mandarin. I didn't think so, but I mean, I guess he wasn't really the Mandarin after all. Also, 2011, Game of Thrones premieres on HBO. I am guilty. I'm still working on watching that. A lot of people didn't like the last season, so I don't know. Maybe I have something to look forward to. Now, jumping back to 1997, Volcano. This is the flick with Tommy Lee Jones and Anne Heck. This is where he's basically trying to figure out a way to divert a volcano from a small community being destroyed, and it's pretty fun. It's like the volcanic equivalent to Twister with Bill Paxton. If you get a chance, if you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. Another more serious fact that happened in 1971 this week: Charles Manson was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Sharon Tate. if you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the recent Tarantino flick, you get the happy version of what the world would have wanted to happen. However, we all know that this is not how the situation turned out, and sadly, Sharon Tate was murdered that night by the members of the family, Charles Manson's family. And our fact from 1894, Thomas Edison's first viewing of the kinetoscope. And so this was a device that was used where people would come to these buildings and they would have these little machines set up, and they would flip through pictures very quickly, kind of like a flip book. And people could pay, and that was their first actual experience with moving film, until, you know, later on in the years when they actually started doing cinema in the theaters, and then it went from silent films to talkies to all these different things. But yes, that is all the major facts that I have for this week in film history. If you can think of any other facts that I missed, or any other facts that you know of that I might not have covered, feel free to follow me on Instagram. Yes, this is my shameless social media plug. I'm very sorry. But feel free to follow me on social media. I have a Facebook page. It is John Wyatt Dowdy Films, John Wyatt Dowdy Films. Also, the same handle can be used to follow me on Instagram. Both of those are public accounts. And if you have any facts that you know of that we could use for the podcast, feel free to send me a direct message and let me know of any ideas, anything that's happening in the next couple weeks, of just fun things that happen in film that I might not know about, but something that I could share with the audience. Let me know. All right. It is time for the main event. I probably could have picked a more ominous song to be talking about one of the great horror films of our time, but you know what? I'm confident in it. I'm going to stick with it. I made the choice, and yeah, we're going to stay with it. So the movie that we're going to be reviewing, as I said before, is Jaws. And Jaws was made in 1975 by Steven Spielberg, and it is based off the book with the same title, written by Peter Benchley. And just as all movies that are made from books, the book is, I think, personally, 100 times better than the movie. But there's something that's always interesting about when someone makes a film based on a book. There's often a lot of inconsistencies, and that's one of the main topics that we're going to be talking about, is the inconsistencies between the movie and the book. So the first big inconsistency is from the opening scene of Jaws, when Chrissy and Tom, they go swimming, and they leave the party and they go skinny dipping, and the thing that was interesting about the book is, you know, in the book, Chrissy's character is dove into a lot more versus the movie. You know, in the movie, you don't actually get to know this character well enough to even care whether she lives or dies. And as the beginning of the movie goes through, you can see that, you know, she's this girl that's run off with this guy. They're going to go skinny dipping, and it's just, you know, typical 70s movie horror film tropes where something bad's going to happen. But in the book, we actually see who she is. We see that she's a college student on vacation, and she's not a resident of Amity, which the movie leads us to believe that she is. Obviously, as the movie moves on, you see that she's been killed by the shark. And when her body is discovered in the book, she still has a head. She still has her head, her arm, and the majority of her torso. But in the movie, they only find her arm. But there are some similarities between the movie and the book with Chrissy. She does leave Tom drunk on the beach while she swims alone and is eaten by the shark in the book and in the movie. And it's a lot more graphic in the book, but the shark, when she's thrown around in the book, it's almost exactly the same as in the movie. And so the second thing that I noticed from the book that was different from the movie is the gore. So in the book, obviously, you can get away with a lot more than what you can on film, because the Motion Picture Association, they have these strict guidelines of what you can and can't show on film. And in the book, they're very descriptive with the scenes of like blood pouring out and bodies and corpses, and especially when two of the major characters that drive the plot along are killed, Chrissy and the Kittner boy. When they're killed by the shark, the book goes into graphic details, like limbs being ripped off and blood gushing out and gaping holes in bodies, and it's just rough. And another thing too is you don't actually get to see the shark. That's another thing that happens in the book. You get to read the description of the shark attacking them, and you kind of get to see what the shark is feeling, which is kind of a weird perspective, but I guess that's a good way to have. You get to feel the protagonist's perspective, but also the antagonist. But we don't get a glimpse of the shark until Brody is chumming the water later on in the book. And the only part that I can remember that was actually intensely gory would have had to been when Brody's son is floating down the river or the little pond with his friends in that boat, and that one guy paddles out to help him. And, he gets attacked, the boat flips over, and the shark basically just eats him in one bite. And the only thing that we get to see of that man's fate is this severed leg that floats down to the bottom of the ocean. And so it's very, like, the movie itself, for a PG movie in 1975, very gory. But if you're wanting to read and wanting to see a lot more gore, definitely check out the book. The book is 10 times gorier than the movie. The final thing that I noticed that was inconsistent between the book and the movie was how Quint dies in the end of the story. In the book, when the three men are making their last stand, and Hooper went in the cage, the shark destroyed the cage, and he went down to the bottom to hide. While Quint and Brody are making their last stand, Quint grabs a harpoon right after the shark has breached the water and is sitting on the back of the deck trying to pull the boat down and trying to eat them, basically. Quint grabs a harpoon and he throws it at the shark, kind of the same thing that Brody does in the movie later on. And when Quint throws the harpoon at the shark bites it. And as the shark starts moving backwards and going back into the water, you as the reader see that the rope that was attached to the harpoon is wrapped around Quint's leg. And the shark drags Quint to the bottom of the ocean, versus in the movie, which was way more intense, I thought. Quint is on the boat and the shark jumps up and it makes the boat kind of do the whole Titanic thing where it tips forward. And as Quint's just sliding and fighting for his life to not be eaten, we see this graphic, hands down. Okay, so I saw this movie for the first time when I was 5 years old. Okay, I had never seen anything like it. I didn't know what. This was what shot my fascination with sharks through the roof. But when I saw this scene, I can just remember thinking, I'm traumatized. This has scarred me for life, seeing this man just bitten in half. And see, at that young age, you don't know that movies aren't real and stuff like that. And so I was sitting there thinking, holy crap, this dude just died. So that was probably one of the most intense parts of the movie, aside from the final, shot, where Brody shoots the rifle into the canister and it explodes. But that is all I could find with inconsistencies between the movie and the book. And now we're going to move on to my next topic with the movie, is how the movie changes genres halfway through. So throughout the first half of the movie, basically Act 1 to the first half of Act 2, the movie is more focused on the horror aspect of this monster that's just lurking below the surface. kind of just waiting for people to get in the water. And for that, I think even that's a quote from the movie, is that they're going to ring the dinner bell when all the people get in the water. But it's just waiting to devour the residents of Amity Island, you know, who are brave enough to get in the water. And we never get to see the monster. And this goal that Brody has of this is basically man versus the unknown ensues. And as the movie progresses, you know, once the town officials realize that there's a serious problem, basically that last attack where everyone sees the shark and it sends the entire beach population into shock on that 4th of July, and the mayor realizes that he's made a mistake, despite Brody and Hooper's countless warnings that there's a shark in the water, they need to pay attention, they need to keep the people out of the water, close the beaches. The movie transitions to an adventure story. See, it changes genres halfway through from being this, oh no, there's something in the water, we gotta hide, scary horror movie, to an adventure movie, kind of like Moby Dick, in the fact that they're trying to find, you know, in Moby Dick, they're trying to find the great white whale, and in Jaws, it's Quint, Hooper, and Brody, they're all trying to find the shark that is eating people. And with this, it changes from the man versus the unknown to man versus beast, because only in the second half of Act 2 and Act 3 do we get to see the shark in its fullness. You know, because Brody's sitting there chumming the water, and he's trying to yell at Quint, telling he wants to take a turn steering the boat, and Hooper's like, nope, I'm the captain, and Quint's like, yep, he's the captain, you just sit there and keep chumming. And Brody says, you just keep chumming this crap, only he doesn't say crap. And that's when we get the first glimpse of the shark in its fullness as it comes out of the water. And then we get that famous line that every single human being that has ever quoted this movie always quotes wrong. Brody steps back into the cabin, he looks over at Quint, and he says, and this is the correct line, you're gonna need a bigger boat. Not we're gonna need a bigger boat. You're gonna need a bigger boat. If you don't believe me, look it up. Movie Clips on YouTube has the specific clip, and it's even in the title. You're gonna need a bigger boat. And so the final thing that I noticed with the film, and if anybody knows me, I always come up to someone and say, hey, you want to know a fun fact? Well, this is my fun fact for the movie Jaws. I had seen this movie probably 30 plus times before I found out about this. So there's a scene in the movie where Brody and Hooper have just dissected the shark, and they're going on the boat to go find out where Ben Gardner's boat is. See, Ben Gardner was one of the fishermen that they had hired, the city had hired to go take out the shark, and he was missing. He never came home. His wife had called in saying that, you know, she couldn't find him, his boat wasn't back. And so Brody gets a call in about this boat that is out in the middle of the water that seems to be abandoned. And so Hooper and Brody hop on Hooper's boat and they head out into the ocean to go find it. This scene is probably one of the bigger jump scares in the movie, but fun fact, Steven Spielberg actually had this scene filmed after they premiered this movie. Now, it wasn't the actual premiere that was in Los Angeles that was the big premiere. Steven Spielberg had really enjoyed the idea of getting one more scare, and he realized that the scene where Brody is chumming the water is such a great jump scare that he just wanted one more. And so after a target audience saw the film and they were terrified of the shark coming out of the water, he wanted to do one more scare. He knew that he could get one more scare out of the audience. So he went out and he reshot the scene. It's the scene where the head floats out of the water. You know, Hooper is down there. He's got his pocket knife. They found the shark's tooth. There's a giant hole in the hull of the ship. And so Hooper's digging it out. And as he gets the shark's tooth out, this head pops out. Easily one of the creepiest parts of the movie, biggest jump scare, I thought, because when I was a kid, even though I knew it was coming, I always jumped for it. And so that was one of the more interesting things that I found out about the movie later on in life. So that is my one fun fact about Jaws. And so now, guys, I want to go into my overall review of the film. Jaws is hands down one of the classic films that will always be handed down from generations of filmmakers and movie buffs for all time. From its legendary theme song to misquoted lines, Jaws has been a film that everyone knows and loves. Whenever we think of that giant dorsal fin, a chill of fear runs down our spines, giving us the fear that we always have a thought in the back of our heads that we're not alone in the water. This film is a film that every film buff, horror fanatic, or film lover should see at least once. Throughout the entire film, we are able to dive into the lives of these average Joe characters that, if in real life, would have no impact on our everyday lives. The world never works out the way we think for those who chase adventure. From jump scares and gore to drunken songs in the cabin of a fishing vessel, this movie has every aspect that makes for a classic. There's mystery, horror, adventure, and loss that impacted the average moviegoer from its original release date to today. Even though cinema and practical effects have greatly improved since Jaws, it still holds up as one of the greatest films that has ever hit the silver screen, causing even those today to question themselves when they edge their way into the water. So guys, that's my review of Jaws. I'm sorry it sounded like I was reading it verbatim, but when I say this one is my favorite movie, one of my top 10, I want to give it the justice and the respect that it deserves. So I did read that verbatim, because when I say I love this movie, if I have a choice between any new movie that's been released now and Jaws, hands down every time I will pick Jaws, because it's that movie that I always remember when I think of my childhood. And so I love it so much that I felt like it would only be fitting that if I was to review a movie, what my first movie should be on this show would be Jaws. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever streaming service you're using. And like I said earlier, follow me on Facebook and Instagram. It's John Wyatt Dowdy Films. One thing that we're going to be doing that I think will be a fun thing to do is we're going to be doing trivia questions at the end of each show. So what the trivia question is going to be, it's going to be a random fact from the movie that I did not mention in the podcast. You can look it up. You can do whatever research you want to do. But if you get the answer right to the first question I mentioned, then the winner will get a shout out on my Instagram and my Facebook page. And if you get the second question right, you will get a shout out on the next podcast. So now, for the first trivia question, if you get this one right, you'll get a shout out on my Instagram and my Facebook page. The question is, what was the name that Steven Spielberg gave the animatronic shark used in Jaws? What was the name that Steven Spielberg gave the animatronic shark used in Jaws? Now, I'm looking for a specific name, and if you send that in as a DM to either my Instagram or my Facebook page, it will be picked at random, and the winner will get a shout out on my Instagram and my Facebook. And now for the second question. Now this one ties in with the first question, so you have to do your research to find the answer to the first question in order to know the answer to the second question. So the first question was, what was the name that Steven Spielberg gave the animatronic shark used in Jaws? Now, who did he name the shark after? Who did Steven Spielberg name the shark after? The winner will get a shout out on the next episode of the podcast. Thank you guys again so much for listening. I appreciate it so much. You have no idea. My name is Wyatt Dowdy, and this is the Wyatt Dowdy Show. Bless up and stay reckless. Thank you guys.